Hello folks, so this is the question we're going to look at. It's assess the view that crime and deviance are linked to youth or linked to being young. Assess the view that crime and deviance are linked to being young. First job is to identify whether it's a usefulness or a debate. It's a debate, which means we do 3 paragraphs for, 3 paragraphs against, rather than just 6 down. And to identify the grid. So it doesn't tell us a grid, it doesn't say functionalism, Marxism, interactionism, which means it's all of the grids. So this side has to be it's young. It absolutely is linked to being young, and this side has to be no, it's older groups or everybody. So older or everyone is the debate. So I always do exactly the same order. I always start with functionalism. Now I'm going to say that young, crime and deviance are linked to being young, as this group experiences blocked opportunities. You know I'm always going to do a blocked opportunities paragraph if I can. Now I would normally do my 3 favourites, which would be Merton, but Merton definitely doesn't mention young. So I'm going to skip over him and then just move to Albert Cohen. So, because he argues when unable to achieve the consensus goal of status in education, so that's how you know they're young, because they're trying to receive an education. When unable to achieve the consensus goal of status in education, there is a reaction formation. There's a reaction formation leading to status, frustration, or the creation of a subculture. Creation of a subculture where status is awarded for deviant acts. The next sociologists I always do are Cloud and Oland. I always do Merton, Cohen, Cloud and Oland. Cloud and Oland don't mention young, but I'm going to pop them in anyway, to be honest. For Cloud and Oland, working class groups experience blocked opportunities from both money and status. For Cloud and Oland, working class groups experience blocked opportunities from both money and status. So have created an illegitimate career structure. Status is awarded, working class experience blocked opportunity from money, so have created an illegitimate career structure. Blocked opportunities within these explains violence and drug use. So, I'm going to pause there. I think I get away with Cloud and Oland even though they don't mention young, because I've got 2 sociologists. This shows crime and deviance is linked to being young. This shows crime and deviance is linked to being young. Young groups experience blocked opportunities from status. Young groups experience blocked opportunities from status. So commit deviant acts as a way to innovate. They commit acts of deviance because they've experienced blocked opportunities. So do it as a way to innovate. However, for Hershey, crime is not linked to being young. However, for Hershey, crime is not linked to being young. It's the result of bonds breaking from older people. So it's not linked to being young, it's actually the result of bonds breaking for older people or becoming weak. Bonds breaking or becoming weak. Merton notes also that blocked opportunities from money cause crime. Merton also notes that blocked opportunities from money cause material crime. But it's not linked to being young. That's my link back to the question. Just taking the other Marxist functionalist, and saying, well, Hershey argues it's not linked to being young, it's when the bonds break. And for Merton, material crime is not linked to being young, it's just linked to the blocked opportunities. It's not young. It's anyone who's blocked or anyone whose bonds break or become weak. However, paragraph against, I'm going to do the red grid. And my favourite Marxist work in the against. So, crime is not linked to being young. Crime is not linked to being young. There is a huge amount. There is a huge amount of white collar and corporate crime. Crime is not linked to being young. There's a huge amount of white collar and corporate crime committed by older groups. So I'm going to do my favourites for Snyder. The most serious acts are committed by corporations in terms of finance and loss of life. For Snyder, most serious acts are committed by corporations in terms of finance and loss of life. My second favourite, they're my favourites because I use them all the time. For Crowell, white collar crime is often softened. White collar crime is often softened, or white collar crime is often softened with language like cons, rip-offs and fiddles. Sutherland coined the phrase white collar crime when studying 70 large corporations. He found laws were frequently violated but rarely prosecuted. He found laws were frequently violated but rarely prosecuted. It's invisible as people are unaware they are victims. My three favourite, because I think they answer a huge amount of questions, so you have to know these ones really well. This shows crime is not linked to being young. Crime is not linked to being young. Crime is not linked to being young. It only appears to be a young activity. Crime only appears to be a young activity because white collar crime is not reported, recorded, or convicted. Crime only looks like it's young because white collar crime is not reported, recorded, or convicted, so won't appear in the official crime statistics. So the official crime statistics suggest it's young groups. However, this is a tricky one. For Hydenson, it's a bit of a struggle, I always do a Hydenson evaluation. For Hydenson, this theory reflects a male stream view. Crime, however, for Hydenson, this theory reflects a male stream view. Crime appears not to be linked to gender and young groups. Crime appears not to be linked to young women, and no explanation is offered for why they're neglecting gender. It doesn't show up on the crime stats either. Quite a tricky one to evaluate, this one. Okay, paragraph 3. We're going to stay with Marxism. The other Marxist paragraph you absolutely need to know is the subculturals, who often get forgotten and neglected. So, crime and deviance is linked. We're going to do deviance here actually, because we're not really talking about crime. Deviance is linked to being, what's the question, young and working class. Deviance is linked to being young and working class because young groups are not locked into capitalism. They're not locked into capitalism. Subcultural Marxists argue capitalism maintains control via ideological dominance and economic pressures. Capitalism maintains control through ideological dominance and economic pressures. Young groups can resist as they are not locked in yet. Then we're going to take our 3 Marxists. For Hall and Jefferson, subcultures can resist the dominant culture. Subcultures can resist the dominant culture with high unemployment, low wages, and an inner city decline. Resist dominant culture with high unemployment, low wages, and an inner city decline. For break, they allow freedom and optimism that things could change. They allow freedom and optimism that things can change, but go on to be trapped like their parents. And for Phil Cohen, subcultures are a symbolic solution. Subcultures are a symbolic solution that stem from diminished employment prospects and an inner city decline. They're really important, although they're hard to remember. This shows deviance is linked to being young and working class. It's showing us that deviance is linked to being young and working class. Deviant subcultures are a way to resist capitalism. Deviant subcultures are a way to resist capitalism. The young can engage in deviance because they are not locked into capitalism yet. Of course, it's a young activity because they can resist capitalism. They're not locked into capitalism yet and seek to resist because it disadvantages. It's young and it's working class because the young can resist and the working, because they can not look into capitalism yet and they can resist, and the working class resist because it disadvantages them. There we go, makes more sense. The young can do it because they're not locked into capitalism, and its working class can resist because it disadvantages them. However, for Maffei-Solly, these ideas about young subcultures are out of date. These ideas about young subcultures are out of date. Subcultures no longer exist. Subcultures no longer exist, suggesting they cannot explain young groups, committing more crime. No such thing as subculture anymore. There's only neo-tribes. Okay, paragraph 4. Interactionism, just to confuse you, the yellow grid, can actually go in either. So really, everyone engages in deviance as a normal part of growing up, is what they argue, some of them. Others argue everybody does it, but they've got the degree of negotiation. So I'm going to hold off on interactionism because it's a bit confusing. So I'm going to do my paragraph 4, and the next grid is right realism. So right realists argue crime is not linked to being young. You'll see I keep moving between deviance and crime, which is important to answer the question. Crime is not linked to being young. It's a result of the underclass. It's a result of the underclass. The underclass, so for Murray I should say, for Murray, the underclass are responsible for a rise in crime. The underclass are responsible for a rise in crime. They have deviant subcultural values. They have deviant subcultural values and a counterculture. They have deviant subcultural values and a counterculture. Marriage is separate from work. Sorry, marriage is separate from childbearing. Apologies. Marriage is separate from childbearing. Acquiring money is separate from work. And men prove masculinity through violence. That's all Murray. In the grid with him is Farrington and West. There is a correlation between poor parenting and offending. There's a correlation between poor parenting and offending. And for Dennis and Erdos, the increasing number of absent fathers. The increasing number of absent fathers undermines the community's ability is undermining the community's ability to control behaviour. Those three. This shows crime is not linked to being young. This is showing us that crime is not linked to being young. It's the result of inadequate socialisation. It's not the result of being young. It's the result of inadequate socialisation, and it creates a rise in crime. However, for Cashmore, the phase of welfare dependency is only 2 years. The phase of welfare dependency is only 2 years, and for Jones, 9.2 million out of 10 million on the welfare state work. Inadequate socialisation, so 9 to 10 million work, suggesting there is no evidence. He's suggesting there's no evidence of an underclass who do not work. There is no evidence of an underclass that do not work. 9.2 out of 10 million on welfare are working. Okay. Does it link back to the question of who do not work? Crime can't link. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what covers it. Right. Interactionism. Interactionism can go either side. So I'm going to choose to put interactionism this side. So my paragraph 5. Deviance is linked Also, deviance is a normal, young people engage in deviance as a normal part of growing up. We all do it. Deviance is linked to young because everyone does it when they're young. We all do it. For Becca, they're my favourite three. For Becca, an individual is labelled excluded from society. An individual is labelled excluded from society. It then becomes their master status, leading to a deviant career. For Cicero, there is a degree of negotiation involved in the labelling process. There is a degree of negotiation involved in the labelling process. Please hold a collective stereotypical view of who constitutes a typical criminal. It undermines the ability of such groups to be able to negotiate. Chambliss, because they are definitely young, studied saints and roughnecks. Chambliss studied saints and roughnecks, and despite committing the same amount of antisocial behaviour, the saints rarely came into contact with police and could use cultural capital to negotiate. This shows, remember, it could go either side. You could go, what's a normal part of growing up, or you could go, nope, everybody does it. It's just older groups can negotiate. I'm going to stick it this side. I think it feels better here. This shows deviance. This shows deviance is linked to being young. We all do it as a normal part of growing up. Deviance is linked to young. It's a normal part of growing up. Why do the saints do it and the roughnecks? Everybody engages it as a normal part of growing up. But middle class groups can negotiate because they have cultural capital. Deviance is linked to being young. It's a normal part of growing up. But middle class groups can negotiate as they have cultural capital. It's why it only appears to be young, working class males. However, for Akers, this theory is incomplete and simplistic. It doesn't really explain why young groups, doesn't really explain why young groups or anyone engages in crime. Doesn't really explain why anyone engages in crime. Okay, against. Last paragraph. So the last paragraph left is left realism, or the next grid is left realism. They argue that crime is a result of subcultures, blocked opportunities, marginalisation, stop and search, or relative deprivation or awareness. But they argue that young groups have significantly different aspirations from older. So that doesn't really work there. So I'm going to go to paragraph 6, which is the next grid, is the green ethnicity grid. So crime is not linked to being young, but linked to blocked opportunities caused by racism. So I'm going to take Nightingale, US black youth, yeah, that's young. US black youth have extremely strong consumerist values and desire high status. Doesn't work because they're young. Okay, I think we're going to have to do crime is not linked to being young, but linked to gender then. It's not linked to being young, but it's linked to gender. Okay, so for Hydinson, hopefully you've just seen what I've done there. I'm just trying to work through it, but it's not going to work with that one, so I'm just going to skip it out if it's too confusing. So for Hydinson, as a result, take the socialisation bit, as a result of socialisation, women lack the elements associated with crime, particularly in terms of toughness and aggressiveness. She's one of my favourites. And then I'm going to take Carlin. Really like Carlin study. For Carlin, women are offered 2 deals to ensure they conform. The class deal, which is material rewards, and the gender deal, patriarchal ideologies. Gender deal or patriarchal ideologies. Women commit crime when they have not had the class deal. So grown up in poverty. They commit crime when they've not had the class deal, so they've grown up in poverty and had to reject the gender deal due to abuse in the home. Felice slag is a powerful mechanism of social control on all women. But she's not advocating, saying it's effective, sadly. This shows crime is not linked to being young. Instead, it is linked to gender. It's not linked to crime. Youth and crime aren't linked. Crime is not linked to being young. Instead, it's linked to gender. Women commit fewer crimes because of socialisation and additional social control. However, for Campbell, females are missing from the official crime statistics because the legal system discriminates in women's favour. It discriminates in women's favour. It's reluctant to convict women. It's reluctant to convict women and possibly older groups. It's reluctant to convict women and possibly older groups, which is suggesting this is why crime appears to be linked to being young. We don't like to convict women, but we also don't like to convict retired groups, I'd imagine. Definitely wouldn't want to. So, 6 paragraphs. This shows. Oh, sorry, to conclude. Deviance appears. What's the question, Sadie? Appears to be linked to being young. These groups have blocked opportunities and have the freedom to resist in society. Because the left-hand side is all deviance. However, it would appear that more serious acts are committed by older groups. It would appear that more serious acts of crime are committed by older groups, but they have more cultural capital and economic to prevent prosecutions and therefore might not show up in the official crime statistics. Official crime statistics. In the intro, you just want to note that the idea that crime and deviance is linked to being young comes from the official crime statistics. Some suggest this is due to blocked opportunities. Some suggest this is due to blocked opportunities. Being able to resist the culture and having the freedom to engage in deviance. Others suggest there is an issue with older crimes not being reported, recorded, or convicted. That's how I do my intro. So it outlines the paragraphs. Right, thank you very much, folks. Any questions, let me know.